Hey, everybody. Oh, my goodness. Here we are, episode 103 of the About to Break podcast. I'm your host, Taylor Hughes, and I got to tell you, I've the last couple of weeks, I haven't done one of these intros. It's been crazy. It's been a whirlwind. How's your week going? How's life? You feeling good? You happy? You enthusiastic? Is it an up week or a down week? Let's be honest. It's always one or the other, right? And sometimes it changes throughout the day. Yesterday, I had a day that I was, I felt somewhat... not to use the word lightly, but somewhat manic. I was one moment super happy, one moment super down, and I couldn't figure it out. And then I sat and talked with Katie and trying to process things and realized, one little thing happened in the day that kind of threw me off. And it wasn't even a family thing. It wasn't even with someone else. It was just, I saw something that reminded me of a sad time. And what are you going to do when that happens? I'll tell you what you do. You got to remind yourself that those moments are momentary, that they're fleeting, and that we are blessed to be able to be alive today. This week I got to see my buddy Bob Goff, who you've heard here on the program, and if you haven't, go check it out. It's a great episode. And Bob said something to me that really challenged me, and he just said 100% kindness, 0% drama. And when I felt funky yesterday, that's what I was reminding myself of. Trying to live with 100% kindness and 0% drama. And I can't think of a better person to have on the show this week than Mr. Mark Schiff. He's an amazing comedian. This guy is when you talk to him, he's just a giving dude. He's one of these guys who's been doing this. He's been in the game a long time. He is on the road regularly, opening for Jerry Seinfield, been his opening act for the last 15 years. The guy's doing it, man. He's killing it. He's doing the things that he loves to do. And yet, such a kind human being. And I was so grateful that he would sit down, went over to his house, got to pet his dog. It was amazing. This is a great conversation. I talk very little in this conversation because I'm just mesmerized by the experience and the knowledge and the kindness of Mr. Mark Schiff. So sit back, relax, and enjoy episode 103, my conversation with comedian Mark Schiff.
No, I'm not a writer.
Okay.
Something is about to break.
Hey everyone, welcome to About to Break. I'm your host, Taylor Hughes, and right now I am sitting in Los Angeles, California at the home of comedian Mark Schiff. Mark, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Taylor.
I'm so grateful that you would do this.
Yeah, me too. We worked together, week and a half, 2 weeks ago?
Ago? Yeah, something like that.
And we met for the first time.
Yeah.
I saw you at the Comedy Magic Club.
Great club.
Yeah, and we just had to put this together.
I'm so glad that we're doing this. And, I love that when I was talking to you first about the podcast, I'm like, it's just guys telling stories from the road. And you're like, I wrote a book called Stories from the Road.
Right.
Perfect.
Right. I killed True Stories from the Road from America's Top Comics.
How did that come about? Was that just, that's what we do. We sit around in green rooms and in between the gig. And
well, I was... Jeff Foxworthy. Do you remember him?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So he had a show called, what the hell was it?
Blue Collar TV.
Blue Collar TV, thank you. So there were a bunch of comics. We were all sitting around at Blue Collar. I was writing on the show.
Right.
And we're all sitting around, and it's lunchtime. We're telling stories.
Yeah.
And everybody's laughing at this story, that story, this story, that story. And the laughs were really big, and other people from other rooms started coming in and just standing around the table, and they were laughing. And this went on for over an hour.
Yeah.
A lot of laughter, a lot of stories. Bill Engvall, me, Rich Scheidner, Jeff Foxworthy. So afterwards, Rich Scheidner turns to me and says, there's a book here.
Yeah.
You want to write this book? Stories, road stories?
Yeah.
And I just looked at him and I said, yeah, let's do it. And literally the next day, we went to my office and we started writing the book.
That's amazing.
We didn't even think about it, had no experience doing it. We said, we got to start collecting stories from people. How do we do this?
Okay.
And we started calling friends, other comedians. We started collecting stories from them. And I knew an agent in New York.
Okay.
Through Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah.
And Paul Reiser, he was his agent too. He was Leno's agent.
Okay. The book agent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they got me in touch with him. I told him the idea of the book. He said, sounds like a great idea. Send me some stories. He read a few of them.
Yeah.
He said, this is really good. And he said, in order to sell the book, though, you got to get big names.
Right, yeah.
Because if it's just road guys, even though some of them had the best stories
yeah.
of all.
It's always the best stories come from the worst places.
Yeah. So they, he said, you got to get some really big names. So we got Seinfeld agreed to do it.
Yeah.
Leno agreed to do it. And Chris Rock. So once we had those three.
Yeah, it was a done deal.
Pretty much, except Chris's story was the one that really sold it.
Okay.
Chris did a story about when he was young, coming up, being in a menage a trois in Chicago.
Yeah.
And then he didn't know it, but the manager of the club had hired these two hookers and then stuck Chris with the bill. And Chris was earning like $700 a week, and these girls wanted $1,000 from him. It was unbelievable.
So it went from being like the greatest night of his life to
the
what
worst
just
night of his
happened.
life. And so once we had that story from Chris, Random House stepped up and said, we'll publish the book if you can get, them to sign off on it. And we did.
Yeah. That's amazing.
The other problem with the big stars signing off is you have to go through lawyers and agents.
Yeah,
and
a lot of time they're like, yeah, I'd love to do it, but then you got to get.
If I'm dealing with you, or you come to me like with this podcast, and you said, Mark, you want to do it? I said yes.
Yeah.
So if I was Chris Rock, you want to do it, you got to talk to my manager. You got to take you 10 months to get him.
Yeah,
if you get him at all. So it took 10 months to get his signature.
Wow.
But we got it, and we got the book out. It took 3 years to get the book going.
That's great.
And people think it's one of the best road story books.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. So it's there's something about that. That's why this podcast started, was because for me, my favorite thing was when you're having a crap week and you've been to terrible gig after terrible gig, and then you sit, in the green room or the closet that's supposed to be the green room, and you talk with other guys and go, "Oh, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one who deals with this."
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's why I was so excited to talk to you, because I'm like, man, you've got to have like so many stories.
I've been on the road a long time.
When did comedy first become a thing for you? When did you first go from, I think I'm a funny guy, to I think I could actually make this a career?
Well, I had an epiphany.
Okay.
When I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
My parents, I'm an only child. My parents took me to a nightclub in Queens.
Amazing.
It was called the Boulevard Nightclub on Queens Boulevard in Queens, New York. It was their anniversary there, and they took me along. And opening the show was Rodney Dangerfield.
Wow.
So I'm 12 years old.
This is your first time seeing comedy.
I never saw live comedy. I never saw, I saw the Three Stooges, Marx Brothers, Lauren Hardy. I loved them, but I never saw, maybe I saw stand-up on TV, but probably not, because they came on late at night.
Yeah.
And I was going to sleep, probably 8, 9, 10 o'clock.
Right.
I wasn't staying up for Carson.
Right, yeah.
So they take me, I see Rodney. He comes out, he's getting these laughs. And I had this epiphany. I said, that's it. I know what I want to do. I want to do this for a living.
Wow.
And I told my parents.
At 12 years old.
12 years old. I told my parents, and they, like all 12-year-olds, they go, 12-year-old wants to be a fireman one day, a doctor the next day, a lawyer.
They didn't think this was going to stick.
Yeah, but it did.
Yeah.
And at 16, I started going to the Improv in New York, just watching the shows.
Yeah.
And at 18, I started trying to do it.
What was that moment like when you said, I'm actually going to go up? Was it an open mic? What was that first time you got on stage?
Well, I started going to the Improv and asking the comedians, how do you do this? What do I do?
Yeah.
And they said, just go home, write some stuff.
Yeah.
Find a place that'll put you on and do it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing today.
Yeah. It hasn't changed.
Some 20-year-old guy comes over to me and goes, how do I do this? I go, write some stuff.
Yep.
Memorize it.
Yep.
And go and do it somewhere, a college basement or a coffee house.
Coffee house, yeah, anywhere that will have it.
So I wrote some stuff, and I went on at a place, and I bombed. I went on at the Improv on a Sunday. It was open mic night.
Yeah, first gig. First time on stage.
44th and 9th Improv. I bombed so bad, I didn't get on stage for 5 years.
Whoa.
I just took off from 18 to 23.
It was just that traumatic.
Yeah, I had battled stage fright my whole life.
Yeah.
So I went up. I was petrified, terrorized, pulverized, humiliated.
Time slows down.
The whole thing
3
was
minutes
weird.
Seems like 20.
Like 14 hours.
Yeah.
And so I didn't do stand-up again, but I started taking acting classes, singing classes, dancing classes.
You knew you wanted to do entertainment.
I knew I wanted to be in the business.
Yeah.
And I had, comedians, we've got like a conniving, cunning side. We got to figure out how to work at night and not hold these long killer day jobs because you can't do both.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I know a guy had actually killed him. This poor guy, Jerry Allen. He worked all day, finished work at 7 o'clock at night, go home and have dinner in New Jersey, then come into New York till 2 o'clock in the morning, then go home and sleep from like 3 to 5:30, then go to work, and he finally had a heart attack.
Yeah, it's too much.
It's terrible. So I rented a 3-bedroom apartment with my friend in New York.
Okay.
It was $350 a month, which is, a long time ago.
Who's booking that apartment? Can I still get that?
$350 a month for 3 bedrooms.
That's amazing.
And we got a third roommate. We charged him $300.
Okay.
So my rent in Manhattan was $25 a month.
It's amazing.
And
it's brilliant.
The guy lived with us for 5 years.
Wow.
Paid the rent for us. And that was my comedy college tuition education.
That's great.
He paid the rent, $300 a month, and then I was able to go to the clubs every single night.
Yeah.
And learn how to do this.
Yeah.
So I'm indebted to that guy.
That's fantastic. And
also, by the way, I realized something too. You say, like, when's the first time? I had another thing. When I was in 5th grade,
okay,
I had a teacher, Mrs. Goldman, and I was a very annoying student. I would just annoy everybody. I wasn't funny. I was annoying.
Okay. How so? You just always had a comment? Or
I'd comment. I'd make sounds in class. I'd sit in the back of the class going, this type of thing. I'd touch people. I'd pin, flick their ear, whatever it was, annoying.
Right.
So one time, Mrs. Goldman said, Mark, I want you to come up to the front of the class because I want the class to see exactly what an idiot looks like. This is what she said. Yeah. So I went up to the front of the class. And the class started laughing. When I was up in 5th grade, they started laughing. And I started making faces, like funny faces. And they kept laughing more. And I thought, this is terrific. She was trying to punish me.
Right.
And she didn't realize that she actually gave me a career choice by doing this.
Right, yeah.
It had the complete opposite effect. I was up there and these kids are laughing. And then when I was going back to my seat in the back, because they put me in the back row, people would slap me 5.
Yeah.
I thought, this is fantastic.
Yeah. It went from being, it could have been a detrimental thing, but I think a lot of comedians do that. We take control of when people are going to laugh at us. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's amazing.
That's a big fear people have is, people are going to make me out to be a fool. Well, if I can choose when they're laughing and what they're laughing at, now I'm in a power position as opposed to being vulnerable, So
it was good. So I owe Mrs. Goldman debt of gratitude.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Goldman,
for helping me with my career. Rodney Dangerfield, who I had a chance to become friends with.
Wow.
I got close to him. I got to be friends with him. And I got a chance to tell him that he was, really responsible in a big way for my getting started. And he could care less.
Really? He could care less?
Yeah. I mean,
All right, Mark. That's great. All right.
Yeah, that's great.
What do you think of this joke? All right.
It's just, it didn't matter. But to me, it mattered.
So in that time period, that 5 years off when you're doing acting and dancing classes and all this stuff, when did you decide, I think I'm going to give comedy a go again? What got you back on stage?
I kept going to the Improv during those years and different clubs, watching comedians, watching them on TV, listening to records.
Yep.
And one day I just got the cojones back.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, it's time to go back on stage.
Yeah.
And then I never stopped.
Wow.
But I battled stage fright.
Really?
Forever. And I still to some degree. It never left me completely. It's better than it was.
Yeah.
But there's a great insecurity when I go up there.
How does it manifest for you? Is that like before the show the anxiety builds, or while you're on stage you deal with it?
Depends on the gig.
Yeah.
It could start as early as a week before.
Yeah.
I start panicking.
Yep.
The night of. But usually once I get up there, it slowly fades.
Yeah.
But before that, it's torturous sometimes. Not as bad as it used to be. I almost passed out a couple of times on stage.
Wow.
I mean, just like
out
of breath, anxiety.
Yep, totally.
I went into brain lock. Mm-hmm. I was once on stage at Caesar's Palace. I was working with Diana Ross, and I almost froze. It's just like, I actually said to the guy backstage, I used to do this a lot. I would do these big theaters.
Right, yeah.
And there's always a guy who does the curtain back there.
Yep.
We don't have that at comedy clubs. We just pull the curtain ourselves.
The guy would page the curtain for you. Yep.
So there's a bald guy back there at Caesars, and I said to him, hey, so let me tell you, this is the last show I'm ever doing. I'm
At
quitting.
Caesar's Palace.
Yeah, I'm quitting after this show because I can't take it anymore.
Wow.
And I would just say that to somebody just to relieve myself that I don't have to go on with this craziness anymore.
Just in your mind, you're like, well, I can do it one last time.
This is it. That's why I say to the guy, this is my last show. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you. Thank you for your help. And I go out. And then of course, tomorrow night I'd show up again. I say to him, all right, I'm going to do one more show now.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's over.
Yeah. I always tell myself I can quit as many times as I want as long as I show up the next day.
That's right. Rodney Dangerfield talked about it once. He said, when he quit the business, because he had quit and then he came back.
He did, yeah. When you go sell aluminum siding or something like that?
Yeah. And he didn't come back for 20 years.
Wow.
And he said when he quit the business, nobody called and wondered where he was.
Yeah. It went on without him.
Yeah. Not one call or anything.
Yeah.
But yes, he quit to raise his kids.
Yeah.
His wife, who he did so many jokes about, was actually dead.
Oh, really?
She died of cancer, and he just kept keeping her alive in the act, doing jokes, and nobody was raising the kids, so he quit to get a regular job and raise the kids.
Wow. And then when they grew up, he went back to it.
Yeah. He'd been on Ed Sullivan 25 times and still wasn't famous.
That's wild.
One time, a lady, he was selling aluminum siding at a house.
Yeah.
It was on a Monday morning, and the lady whose house he was putting in aluminum siding said to him, "Didn't I see you on Ed Sullivan last night?" And he said, "Yeah, that was me." She goes, "The hell are you doing here?" Isn't that something?
That's how it is, yeah.
Yeah.
I have friends who are actors who they wait tables or they work at a club and they get that all the time. I had one friend who was an actress who was on a very popular TV show for 4 years. And then the next day, she's like, I got no income, no insurance. She started working at a cafe. Right. And she's like, there's something so weird to go back to your old job and have people recognize you from TV.
Right.
And she just couldn't handle it. It was just too much.
There was big news a couple of months about that guy that was on some show. He was a star of some show, and now he would.
Oh, yeah. I saw that, yeah.
What was that? And they made it. They tried to embarrass the guy, and he said, listen,
like, gotta work.
To be embarrassed about. I got a job here, and I'm making money.
Right.
He was on a big TV show, and he was like one of the co-stars of it.
It's interesting what people think success is, It's also weird in this business because sometimes people see, oh, you did this thing on TV. Isn't that great? And you must be, everything's working out. It's like, that was a Tuesday for 3 hours.
Right.
That was such a small part of what I do in my life,
Right. You see these movies like, I remember hearing, like one of my favorite movies of all time is Mary Poppins.
Yeah.
So you figure all these people are great friends with each other. They made this unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
They worked together for 3 weeks.
Right.
They went to Austria. They were in separate hotels, and that's the end of it. They just happened to make a masterpiece while we're there.
Right.
But they don't hang out with each other the rest of their lives.
Right. Yeah. It's a different experience than when you're in the audience watching it.
Absolutely. I used to think all comedians and were incredibly rich.
Oh, yeah. Or, yeah, you see people on TV and you're like, well, everyone on TV is making money. It's like, no.
Yeah, I would see them come out on Johnny Carson. I'd see this guy, and I'm thinking they're all millionaires. It's unbelievable. One after another. And later I found out it wasn't the case. I mean, either they were doing okay.
Right.
Making some money.
Yeah. And it's surprising when you find out, or you start talking with guys and you find out who's really making money and where their money's coming from. And a lot of times it's not from the things that you think it is,
Morey Amsterdam from the Dick Van Dyke Show. You remember him?
Yeah.
Okay, Morey Amsterdam was one of the most successful business guys. He owned parking lots in New York.
Yeah. Oh,
made millions and millions of dollars.
Brilliant.
He made something off the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Right.
But not enough to retire.
Right.
Bob Hope owned a lot of real estate in the Valley. I got this cup that says, good dad. That's what I own. So that's all good.
That's great, man. Yeah, that's the big thing I always look at, is with our jobs, you got to show up somewhere to get a check. You don't call in sick. You have to do the gig, and that's where the money comes from. And then I'm always going, okay, well, someday, where does the money come from? You got to think about the future. My buddy's trying to buy up a ton of apartments and rent them out and all that. And I'm not there yet.
And it could go well, but you're right. You got to kind of try to figure it out.
Yeah. But no one gets, if you're in this business, I've heard Seinfeld talk about this. If you're in this business because of the money, you're in the wrong business. It's got to be something more than
When we got into the business, there was no business.
That's true.
There was none. There were no clubs on the road.
Yeah.
There was Vegas for the big comedians and the lounges.
Right.
There was the Catskill Mountains somewhat, and there was some supper clubs around the country.
Yeah.
Mafia-owned supper clubs.
Yep.
Other than that, there was nothing. There was no yucks and hilarities and this. There was nothing. We got into it, and then disco owners started seeing that comedians were getting popular, and they said, hey, let's try to open some comedy clubs.
Wow.
And they did, and it became a big thing. It's bigger now than ever.
It's comedy now, comedy clubs especially. I mean, there's a huge resurgence in the last 5-10 years. I mean, probably as big as it was, back in like the early 80s, that kind of thing?
It's pretty big.
Yeah, that's wild.
I don't do them, but it's pretty big.
Yeah. So what was it like when, so you're going on to Caesar's Palace and you're telling them, I'm not going to do this anymore. Was there a moment when that stopped being the case, when you stopped feeling like, you needed to say that to keep going?
Eventually that stopped, but I just struggled through it myself.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. It's an anxiety that never went away. It's gotten better, easier.
Yeah.
I have more confidence.
Yeah.
But still, when I do new material, it's, but everybody, you're shaky.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's just the way it is.
It's a very vulnerable thing. I mean, I do magic, so I at least have a trick that if the jokes don't land, I can lean into the trick and I know at least something's going to work. But as a comedian, it's just you on stage with a microphone. There is that moment of like...
No props, no guitar, no piano.
Yeah.
No nothing. It's just you, the microphone, a glass of water, and a stool.
Yeah.
It's very basic, and that's it.
And when it works, there's nothing better. And when it doesn't, there's nothing worse.
Well, when people don't like a comedian, they say things like, it sounds like you've ruined their life. They go, I hate this guy. This guy's awful. Oh, I'm sick. This guy ruined my night. I mean, it's just like,
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny.
The only thing close to watching a comedian completely, bite it on stage is, I think, watching an electrocution of somebody. Somebody sitting in an electric chair with their hands on the little, the way they sit with their hands on the armrest.
There is that moment where it's going to happen.
Yeah.
You're telling it's not, you can tell this guy's not doing so good.
We had a show not too long ago, and I hired a comedian to work with me. There were a couple of comedians, and one of them didn't do so well.
Yeah.
And afterwards, people would come over. I feel so bad for that person. Oh, it was like watching them get shot. Like, oh, are they okay?
Yeah.
They seem so lost up there.
Yeah.
So people can tell.
I realize too, everybody has rough days at work.
Oh, yeah.
No matter what your job is, you have a rough day at work. The interesting thing is when you're a performer, your rough days of work happen in front of everybody.
That's right. Some comedian has one of the greatest openings. You know the guy who takes the coffee and he makes coffee before he walks on stage.
Okay.
And then doesn't pay any attention to the audience. And he has a stool and he has some coffee and he puts some sugar in it, then a little milk, and stirs it and sips it and a little more milk. And then he turns to the microphone and he goes, hey, when you go to work, do you start right away?
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Everyone's probably just like, what is this guy doing?
That's right.
So you worked the clubs for years and years.
Yeah. When we went out on the road, we immediately became headliners. Because there was no...
Because up until that point, it wasn't a thing.
It wasn't clubs. So they had to get somebody to headline the clubs.
Right.
We were better than anybody else coming up. So they would use some local guy or bring in a middle guy, or they would take an MC from a club.
Yeah.
And we immediately became headliners. And then our name got, people in other clubs go, who did you... they would look and they said, Mark Schiff headline there. Let's use him to headline here.
Yeah. And so you're coming up in a business as the business is, it's almost like the business is figuring it out while you're figuring it out.
They're figuring it out, pay, what to do, travel. They start buying condos. I remember one gig when I first started, there was a club called Hilarities. Excuse me. There was a club called Hilarities in Canada.
Okay.
So I spoke to the guy on the phone, and it was 2 shows a night, and it was $1,500 he was going to pay. So I said, this is the most amount of money ever.
Yeah.
I said, fantastic. How long should I do? He says, you do 45 minutes. You'll headline do 45 minutes. I said, okay. Meanwhile, I only had about 20 minutes of material. But
you're not going to say no to the gig.
Yeah. So I figured out. So I get up there and I figured I'll talk to the audience. I'll do this and that.
Yeah. So
I do the first show, and I do like 45 minutes, and it went pretty good. And it's a supper club.
Okay.
So then I do the show, and then I get off stage, and the guy goes, "Okay, you go back on in about 30, 40 minutes." And I look, and I see nobody's leaving.
The same audience?
So I said, what's going on with them? And he said, well, they're going to have dinner now. And then I will give them dessert. And then you come out and you do another 45 minutes. I said, what did you tell me? I said 2 shows. We didn't say the same audience.
You got 20 minutes of material and you got to do an hour and a half.
Yeah. And
what did you do?
It was probably one of the most creative weeks of my life.
Yeah, because this was every night. You were doing this every night.
7 nights. Yeah, 7 nights. It was like Sunday to Sunday or Monday to Sunday or whatever it was.
Oh, yeah.
And you just, I would pick up a chair and I go, chairs, and I would just try to make up stuff about chairs.
Yeah. Wow.
Talk to the audience. I would go back in the afternoons and try to learn jokes, funny jokes.
Right.
Just do anything to fill that time.
Yeah.
It was an enormous amount of time.
Terrifying every night. It's like the next night
ridiculous.
You're still like, because now you know how hard it is.
Totally insane.
But by the end of that week, I bet you were like, oh, I've got 15, 20 minutes of good stuff out of that.
Some new stuff that'd be interesting. But, and believe it or not, the guy hired me again.
Wow.
He hired me back. Yeah, it was great. This guy has no taste, and he has no idea what comedy is. And
you learn traveling around the country that the palate for humor is different. That
I worked in Cleveland one time at the Cleveland Comedy Club, and there was a guy on. You don't know what audiences and their taste. This was a long time ago too. I worked at the Cleveland Comedy Club, and it was the guy I always watch my opening act to see what he does, to see if there's some similarities.
Right.
So this one guy goes on, and he does all this racist stuff with the N-word. It's one joke after another, and the audience is laughing their heads off.
What?
Nobody's saying, "Hey, what are you doing?"
In Cleveland?
In Cleveland.
Yeah.
And he's just one joke after another. So I complained to the owner, and I ended up getting fired that week.
You got fired.
The owner loved this guy, thought he was hysterical. Obviously, the owner was a racist himself.
That's ridiculous.
I ended up, again, I was watching people's acts, and this one guy, he opened for me, he did 20 minutes on bowel movements.
And a lot of these guys are from their local. So you're seeing them for the first time. These aren't guys you brought with you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this one guy, he goes on, he does 20 minutes on one subject. Bowel movements.
Wow.
The noises you make when you're sitting on the toilet, the squeezing, the shapes, the different types of toilets, the flushing, the water coming up and going down, it's getting clogged. He does it all, anything you can imagine on toilet stuff. So I'm watching this, and I lean over to a waitress who's walking by, and I go, have you ever seen this guy before? So she goes, oh, you mean Dr. Shit?
What? They called him Dr. Shit?
So I said, what? Yeah, Dr. Shit, that's what we call him. I said, that's what you call him? Yeah. She said, because that's all he talks about. Right? So I'm not a guy to tell people what to say. I mean, it's a free country. You got the First Amendment. You can say anything you want.
Yeah.
But I went over to him. I said, listen, I work clean.
Yeah.
Can you talk? Do you have anything else
you
could talk about maybe to help me out?
Yeah.
He said, I do. I got some other stuff. I'll do it tomorrow. So I watch him. And he's got all this other stuff that's clean.
Yeah.
That's not no bowel. So I thank him profusely. I go, thank you. That was fantastic. The next night I watch him again, and he does about 80% of the new stuff, but 20% bowel movement moved back into the act. By the end of the week, it was all bowel movement stuff.
Wow.
He was so asphyxiated on this one particular subject.
He just thought that's what people wanted to hear him talk about?
It's what he loved more than anything else talking about.
Look, I got to follow my passion, man. That's
Some
insane.
people like it's the Beatles song. Some people like bowel movement jokes. So
I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about, because I work clean and I know why I do it, but I'd love to hear, because you've seen the trends go up and down with this, where comedy was very, very clean cut, then got, more edgy and raunchy, then got clean cut again, and now is back up to, what have you learned about that, or kind of what's your take on it as a...
Well, when I started, you couldn't curse on stage.
Yeah.
It was even in the clubs, like the improv. Yeah. You just couldn't do it. Or if you did, you were allowed one word or two words for the whole set.
Right.
That was really it. And it was a big deal to hear these expletives coming out of a speaker.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Nobody ever heard that before.
No.
So all our role models were clean, Bertie Hackett in those days, and Don Rickles, and Shecky Green, and of course Bill Cosby, all these, Woody Allen, they all were clean. So we followed in their footsteps.
Yeah.
But plus, you couldn't get on TV.
Oh,
there was no cable.
Yeah. Right.
There's no HBO. There's no this and that. You just either work clean or you didn't do TV.
And a lot of guys try to clean up their act. They go, "Oh, just replace this word," and it doesn't work.
Once it's in, you don't have that punch.
Mm-hmm.
So we then HBO and all these other cable stations came in, and you could say almost anything you want, or anything you want. And then people like Eddie Murphy and
Pryor and all these guys. Yeah.
Now, some people, it's a natural thing to Pryor talked like that.
Right. He wasn't putting on an act.
No,
this
he was
is just
raised
how he talked. Yep.
in Peoria in a whorehouse by his grandmother, who was the madam of a whorehouse.
Yeah.
And this is what he knew, and this is the way he talked.
Yeah, it would almost be weird for him not to.
Well, he had a career first where he would work clean. Yeah. Pryor worked clean, and he couldn't. He gave it up because he was very much like Bill Cosby. Yeah. And he didn't want to be that. He quit the business, went to San Francisco, developed what became Richard Pryor that we know. Yeah. And so I've always hung with it. I had one interesting story. I was in San Jose. Okay. And I was working at a place called Rooster Teeth Feathers. It's a club up there.
All right.
And sitting in the front row is a table with about 6 Hell's Angels. Men and women sitting there. They got the jackets,
they got the
Hell's Angels on the back,
the
the whole thing.
Yep.
Beards, and they're throwing back booze. So after the show, this big burly Hell's Angel guy with a big full beard comes over and he goes, "I want to talk to you." So I said, "Yeah, sure. What's up?" He goes, "I just want to tell you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate seeing somebody work clean."
From the Hell's Angels.
Yeah, from Hell's Angel. I thought he was kidding me, the guy. I said, "Really?" He said, man, all the swearing, all the cussing all the time. I'm sick of it. It's so refreshing to see somebody who doesn't have to use the full lot of words all the time. Right. I said, "Well, thank you very much, Right.
And that's so wild. I would never have guessed it.
I never would have guessed it. It was really an amazing moment.
I was lucky to have a mentor who really challenged me. He's like, if you work clean, you can work anywhere. And it's true. Yeah. I mean, if you work clean and it's good, your stuff is good, you can work anywhere. Anywhere. And I can't tell you how many corporate events that I do a year where every now and then they'll bring in a comedian. And he said, "Oh yeah, I can work clean, but stuff sneaks out, or
right." And their version of clean is
It's not corporate clean.
Yeah, and I book a lot of religious shows. Yeah, because a lot of these Orthodox Jewish shows, and there can't be any mention of sex, drugs, right? Even if there's no cursing, it's just you got to lay off of certain subjects, and I've been able to do it over the last couple of years, book guys, but it gets harder and harder to find new people who really work that way, or can for 15 or 20 minutes. Yeah, very difficult.
Well, and you have to be able to read the room too. You gotta feel.
The Christian comedians have figured it out.
Yeah,
they play these mega churches, and they know how to work clean and do all that stuff. They're pretty great. There's a guy named Jeff Allen. I don't know if you know.
Oh, okay. I've seen him before. Yeah.
Fantastic. He's a born again guy.
Yeah.
And he's one of the funniest people on the planet.
Wow.
Talks about his wife, his kids, his growing up.
Yeah.
Brian Regan.
Brian Regan. Yeah.
Right.
Man, that guy.
Prolific, clean.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And his stuff, I was watching an old special of his. It's still solid. Like his material is timeless.
Sure.
Do you feel like is that something you've really like had to lock into of kind of evergreen content, or are there?
If you're talking about everyday stuff, I don't do TV commercials.
Yeah.
I don't do impressions of people. I talk about everyday stuff. My wife, my kids, my parents. You can't go wrong. I had a woman once. I was doing a comedy store, and actually, she was a girl that dated Sam Kinison.
Oh wow, yeah.
Can't remember her name. Maya Hatsudo, a Chinese girl. She grew up in a rice paddy in China.
Wow.
Right? Her parents grew rice in China and worked the fields. She came to the United States, became a waitress at the Comedy Store, and she came over to me and she said, "How do you know my mother?"
What?
Yeah, after seeing my act. She said, her mother is exactly like my mother.
Yeah.
And my mother did not work in the fields in China gathering rice.
Right.
But they're all the same.
You find the common traits.
Liza Minnelli one time heard me. And she came over and said, "Man, I thought you were talking about my mother. My mother's Judy Garland." I'm thinking, what, are you kidding me?
You're like, my mother is no Judy Garland.
My mother never sold out Carnegie Hall.
Right.
Had an incredible drug addict,
Right.
Mothers and mothers. That's the way it is.
Yeah. I was listening to Phil Rosenthal, who created Everybody Loves Raymond. And somebody was asking him in an interview, like, how did you write this show that is so, like, it reaches so many people?
Yeah.
And he said when they first started writing, he kept going, oh, that's too personal. No one's going to relate to it. That's too personal. No one's going to relate to it. And then he realized the more he just wrote about his life and his family, people would be like, I don't know how, my brother's exactly like that.
That's right. The more personal, the more universal.
Yeah.
Carl Reiner knew that when he did the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Yeah.
He had the writers come in and say, so tell me what happened this weekend with your wife.
Wow.
Tell me what happened with your husband. Tell me what happened with your kids. I want stories from your life. Stories from your life.
Wow.
Who tripped over this? What happened on the car ride? What happened when you went to grandma's? I want those stories, and that's what they put in the show.
It's just life. It's just sharing life.
Totally.
Yeah, I think we forget, and that's part of what comedy does, is it reminds us that we all have these things in common. That no matter where you work or where you're from or what your family's like, we all are dealing with the same things. We're trying to figure it out,
Absolutely.
Man. So when did you go from clubs to doing like theater dates and all of that? What was that journey like?
Well, I had an agent in New York. Well, actually, he was part owner of the Improv, a guy named Chris Albrecht.
Okay.
And Chris owned part of the Improv, and he was moving out to L.A. to become an agent at ICM.
Yeah.
And he said, Mark, why don't you move out to L.A. and I'll sign you with the agency, and we'll try to get you work out in California.
Yeah.
So I moved out to California, and because he was with a big agency, they were hooked up with big rock people.
Okay. Yeah.
Kenny Loggins, Diana Ross, Paul Anka,
And a lot of they would have comedians open for them a lot. That was
Yeah, so that's what he did. Wow. He hooked me up with an agent at ICM that handled live performers, and they all of a sudden threw me in front of, one night I was doing comedy clubs with 150 people, the next night I was in front of 3,000 people, or 2,500 people.
What's the biggest difference that you've learned going from because comedy, it almost is like the small venue with the low ceiling is how it was meant to happen.
Absolutely.
And then you go into these vast theaters where the ceiling just, the
2,500 is still manageable. Once you start getting 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, these guys that do arenas, it's just not a good comedy show.
Yeah.
You're just too far away. You're watching it on the screen. You might as well. I find I have to work a little slower because the laughs take time to get to you a little bit. So I work a little slower. So the pacing's a little different. Can't work as frenetically as I do at the clubs, as fast and as quick. And at any given moment, you're only getting 50% of the audience, because if you got good jokes, they're still recovering from the last show.
Yeah.
So they're, and then you're on to the next one. So they're still laughing from the one before.
Right.
So they almost miss half your show.
That's interesting.
But I started working in those crowds, and I learned how to do it.
That's so interesting about slowing down. My intuition would be like, it's a larger venue. I need to play bigger. I need to move faster.
Not faster vocally, but you need to be bigger with your arms and your legs, and you need to be, I'm bigger.
Yeah.
And you have to look rather than just at the front there, or so, I look up in the balcony sometimes. I look up in the little seats on the sides.
Yeah.
And I march the stage. Norm Macdonald, who's one of the great comedians.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
He just stands there. He doesn't move.
Just
20,000 people or 16 people.
Yep.
He just moves. I just saw him this morning on a YouTube do a bit on alcoholism. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Oh my goodness. His stuff is fantastic.
Yeah, no, he's amazing.
I saw his last, I think it was the last Letterman show, and he was the final comedian on it.
He did the thing on Germany.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Twice.
They want to take over the world.
Yeah. And who did they choose as their foe? The world.
Yeah.
So good.
It's an amazing piece of comedy.
Yeah. Oh, it's brilliant. That's brilliant. I can't fathom going from those small rooms to just the regular, because it's one thing when you do a big room and you're like, wow, that was crazy. But then to have that shift where now, I mean, most of the time you're doing, like, how big are these rooms that you're doing when you guys are touring and stuff?
2,000 to 5,000.
Gee whiz.
We went to Israel and we went to Canada. There were 8,000 each show.
Oh my goodness.
2,000 to 5,000. 2,000 is still fairly intimate.
Okay.
Depends on what the layout of the theater is.
The theater, yeah,
Some of these theaters, they made beautiful old theaters, and the sound is great. And
a lot of the older theaters, too, it seems like the back row is closer. The seating is raked, so they're,
hanging over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Ah, that's awesome.
And they got great sound systems now, and, it's not like, like it used to be. You can really hear them now.
Totally.
So it's all good.
And you spent a lot of time on the road with Jerry Seinfeld, is that right?
Yes, I've been on the road with him for like 15 years.
Yeah. How did that relationship begin? Where did you first meet in the clubs, or where did?
Yeah. We started at a place called the Comic Strip in New York.
Yeah.
And on 82nd and 2nd, and Jerry was at the time, he was working as a waiter at a place called Burger and Brew. Yep. He was selling light bulbs to make money, to pay his rent. But he was working the Comic Strip at night.
Yeah.
And for no money. And I was working there, and a guy named Larry Miller.
Yep.
And just a lot of people. A lot of people there. So Paul Reiser was there. And every night we just became friends. We were there every night for years.
Yeah.
For 5 years, every night I would see Jerry. There were no clubs, by the way. Like I said, there was no clubs to go to work at.
Yeah. So you would find that one spot, and that was where you would.
I mean, there was no work. There was no job for us.
Yeah.
We would just do these showcase clubs. We had no idea that there was going to be an industry.
Yeah.
We just found something we loved to do, and we didn't know how to become anything except our goal was to become as funny as we could possibly be.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
And every night, 7 nights a week, 365 days a year, we would show up at a club.
Yeah.
And so we became friends, and we've been friends, and so once Jerry got on the road again, I started going out with him. And it was all good. It's all been amazing.
That's phenomenal.
We had one of our first road gigs together. Jerry and I, we did Washington, D.C., a place called Garvin's Grill. And I had a 1976 Toyota, and we drove down in the Toyota.
Yeah.
And hung out and just had a great weekend.
I feel like that hang time is where a lot of the great stuff comes for me.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I watched Jerry's special, Jerry Before Seinfeld, saw you there. Right. And but you watch these specials where they're talking about kind of how it was when the clubs were first beginning. And it seems like a lot of guys, they'd have a home club and they would spend a lot of time there. Every night you'd be at that spot. It. Nowadays, it's crazy. You go to do a club, and it seems like every comic does their set, and then they leave to go do a set somewhere else. They're just constantly,
we did that too.
Okay.
But we did have a home base.
Okay.
It was like Major League Baseball. The Yankees play Yankee Stadium, but they went to other places.
Right.
So my home base originally was the Improv.
Okay.
Jerry's was the Comic Strip.
Yep.
So I would do I would try to get on at the Improv. If I got on early enough, then I would go over to the Comic Strip, try to get on there.
Okay.
Try to get on and Catch a Rising Star. But when I was just trying to get on clubs, I couldn't get on at those places because those were the big rooms.
Right.
So we would go down, me and Jimmy Brogan and other people would go down to Greenwich Village, a place called Folk City, Kenny's Castaway. And we would do sometimes 5-6 shows a night.
Wow.
And then we would go uptown. We'd just hang out till 2-3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then go out for coffee and donuts or something to eat.
It's a nocturnal life.
get back home at 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
Sleep till noon.
Yeah.
Get up, have breakfast at a coffee shop. Maybe do some exercise, whatever. Then go take a little nap.
Yep.
And get ready for the night.
Yeah.
And then when we came home at night, we always brought a tape recorder with us.
Okay.
We taped every set.
Yep.
And then when we went home at night, we would listen to the set at home.
Yeah.
And then fix it all up.
Did you save any of those recordings?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of them.
Do you ever sit and listen to them? And
Not too much anymore, but I sound like I was 9 years old because
Really?
I was 9 years old. So it was over.
What's the biggest? I know this podcast is not a how to. I always tell people it's not a how to get in the business. It's more of a survival guide, solidarity for the journey.
Sure.
But what's one of the biggest lessons you've learned about doing stand up and trying to, at going out and saying, I'm going to do this as a career. I'm going to make this my living.
Well, Seinfeld talks about it in Jerry Before Seinfeld. It's all about the writing. Mm. See, the thing with if you don't keep writing and don't keep creating stuff, you're dead. Mm. You're pretty much going to, you're just not going to go to the place you'd like to go.
Right.
See, the stand-up is a very interesting thing because we have to do like 6 different things. We have to learn how to write.
Yep.
We have to learn how to perform. Mm-hmm. We have to learn mic technique. We have to learn how to stalk the stage. We have to learn how to direct ourselves with these pieces. There's a lot going. We have to learn audience repertoire, back and forth with them. So there's a lot of actors don't have to learn that. Singers don't have to learn it. Dancers, they got their dance and that's it. They don't have to deal with the audience. They don't have to deal with this. We have to do all this stuff. And each one is a separate talent. Mm. So you don't learn them at the same speed.
Right.
Like a lot of guys, their writing is weaker than their performing. Yeah. Like sometimes you see these performers, tremendous performers, but their writing is
the material's
terrible.
Not there. Yeah.
Some guys you see have great jokes, but can't perform for a dime. Yeah. So you have to learn how to do everything. And that's what takes the longest. That's why it takes at least 10 years to become a great stand-up, 10, 15 years.
And then there's people
writing. Do you remember that scene with Jerry? The notepads?
The notepads, all on the street. That was amazing.
Every time I'm with him, he's got the yellow pad out and he's going over the jokes backstage. Wow. He gets the pad for $1. He's worth whatever. Fortune. He still buys the pads for $2.98.
Something about the tangible. Writing it down on paper and
when it goes from your heart through your hand, there's something about it. It's sort of when you're typing it, it's not the same thing. But when you're actually moving your body with it, there's some sort of deeper connection. It seems.
I'm encouraged because there's those moments where as a performer you go like, is this really going the way it should go? Or you get to a moment where you're like, this is good, but is this what it's going to be for the next 30 years? Just like this?
Maybe.
See, that's encouraging.
No, but it's not discouraging. I'll tell you why. First of all, I saw your act. Yeah. See, you have you did a tremendous job when I saw you. You not only do your magic, but you have a thing that you talk to. In fact, the rabbi was talking about how deep your stuff was. Mm. And how it would be great to bring you in for the kids because you have lessons, you're teaching. Yeah. You really got a lot going on here. So what happens is what I try to remember, it's not about me, it's about them. And I have this gift. And actually, this is what I do. Before I do my show, I actually say a little prayer and I ask God to remind me. Yeah. I want to be reminded that I'm not doing it for me. I thank God for this gift that I can share with these people.
That's such a good way to look at it.
And that takes the onus off of me.
Yeah, you're not going out there to take something from them. I'm not going out there to get laughs. I'm going out there to give.
It's complete opposite. You're just going out to give it away. And you can't keep it unless you give it away. Mm. So you just give it away. And it's like love. When you give it away, the great thing is you always have more.
Wow.
So that's what I do is I try to remember I got this gift and it's been given to me. It's on loan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for me to share with other people.
That's beautiful, Mark.
And this may be as good as it gets, but it's better than so far what I perceive as the alternative.
Right. Yeah.
Being locked in an office with people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't like being locked up with people like in an office 8 hours a day.
No.
50 weeks a year.
Yeah, it's a privileged thing to complain about the hard part of doing the thing you would do for free anyway. you know?
I mean, 99% of the people never get. I mean, who gets applause for what they do at work?
Yeah, that's
you
true.
You and me.
That's true.
My wife has a job, but nobody applauds her. They just make it difficult on her.
Yeah. And a lot of the times the successes go totally unseen or unrecognized.
Totally. Every day I go and do a show and they go, yeah, they're screaming, yelling, thanking me.
Yeah. And then there's those moments where we're complaining. They didn't like the bit about the toothpaste.
Well, the one thing I hate about the audience is sometimes they'll pick the weakest bit to be their favorite.
Yes.
I don't particularly have this, but if you have like one joke about letting gas go,
right?
A fart joke.
Yeah,
they'll come up. You could do an hour of brilliant stuff on family, and they come up. Oh man, that joke about farting under the covers. That's the greatest. They just pick the stupidest thing.
Yeah, that's always been a pet peeve of mine. I had a bit that would kill, and I had been doing this since I was like 15 years old. But it was a funny bit. But I hated that I'd be spending so much time writing and working on new material and new stories. And after the show, they'd come up and talk about that one thing. I finally just stopped doing it. I was like...
And also, for a comedian, it's really important for me anyway, I've learned, you don't ever... I don't want the audience to ever think that I'm better than them, that I'm smarter than them, that I'm deeper than them, that I'm wiser than them. Right. I'm just there to entertain. Yeah. That's it. I'm not trying to teach you anything. I'm not trying to, make you more evolved as a human being. I'm just trying to make you laugh today and feel better.
Yeah.
That's it. And there's a lot of power in that.
There is a lot of power in that, especially... I mean, a lot of people nowadays they're looking for some sign of hope or joy or peace.
People come over, they say, man, I haven't laughed like that in years. Thank you.
Yeah.
God, I didn't, you don't know who's out there. You see, that's the thing. I'm doing it for me. I'm cheating people. You got people out there with cancer and somebody in the family just died and a sick kid. And then they come over and they go, something, my husband died 4 months ago and I didn't think I'd ever laugh again. Thank you.
Wow.
You can't beat that.
Yeah. That's when you go like, that's why I do this. I have a buddy who I was having a rough time and right before the show, I was complaining, like I shouldn't have been, but I was just, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I want to go out there. And he looked at me and he said, there's only two people in the audience tonight that you need to perform for. He's like, someone who's going to see their very first show and someone who's going to see their very last show.
Right. Wow.
Go think about those two people.
Wow. Nice.
Next time you do stand up, you're going to perform for someone who this is going to be the last comedy show they ever see, and someone who this is the very first comedy show they ever see. And there's something about that, getting the focus off yourself and onto the other people that just it makes all the difference.
Got to take it off yourself.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's not a little kid out there that I'm not his Rodney Dangerfield.
Yes, exactly.
That's going to see a stand-up for the first time.
Exactly.
His mother and father brought him. He's 14. Because I have that. I got people in the audience coming over with their little kids. And sometimes the kid will go, I'd like to do this one day.
Yeah.
And by the way, I give them my phone number.
That's awesome.
I say, call me if you ever want to talk about it. And
that is awesome.
I'll have a conversation or two with them. They either maybe call once, twice, or mostly not at all.
Yeah.
But whatever it is.
There's something about just giving people access like that, And we remember, you remember faces and names. You've already mentioned a few today that you wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for them.
Absolutely.
And
No, absolutely.
It's an honor the moment you're able to pass it on, you know?
I didn't invent this.
Right?
This was given to me.
Yeah.
You know, what I invented was my style.
Right.
Every comedian has a different style. You know, Norm Macdonald and Amy Schumer and Brian Regan, you know, they're from like different planets.
Right.
These people. Every comedian has a different style.
Yeah.
And a different take on life. We invent that, but we're the art form? No.
Just so you can't be selfish with it.
You know, stand-up comedy is legitimized Jewish people in America.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because in the 50s and 60s, 85% of the stand-up comedians were Jewish.
Right.
So you have all these people in the country who knew nothing of Jews.
Right.
Never met one.
Yep.
In Iowa and Montana and wherever here.
Or had terrible opinions or,
And then they would see Don Rickles, Buddy Hackett, Shecky Green, Joan Rivers, these Jews come out.
Yeah.
And they would sit at home and go, you know, these Jews are pretty funny people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like these people.
Yeah.
Look at them, they make me laugh all the time. And it kind of legitimized us.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm always amazed that the Three Stooges and the Marx Brothers, that these guys came out of one birth canal each.
Oh, wow.
Like three of the funniest people in the world.
Isn't that crazy? I've never thought of
one
that.
Birth canal. Mo Shemp and Curly came out of one birth canal.
I have never thought about that.
You know, Harpo, Chico, Groucho, Zeppel came out of another birth. You know, one woman was able to pop out four of the funniest people that ever lived.
Isn't that wild?
And three of the funniest people that ever lived. Usually it's a one-off.
Right, you know? Right. You have the one person in the family that's not going to be a lawyer or a doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you don't pop out three geniuses.
No. That's crazy. My wife's grandpa and all his siblings were child actors. And when they first moved to Los Angeles, they moved to Echo Park, and it was right when Max Sennett built the Keystone Studio, and he built it next door to their house.
Wow.
And their dad worked in the film. He would do like, you know, wire work and things like that for the films. So every day there was 9 of the kids. Every day they'd line up the kids at the fence, and the directors would come over and they'd be like, we need 2 boys and a girl for this shoot. And they'd hand them, you know, they'd be like, you, and you. And they'd hand them over the fence. They'd go work in the movies for the day. And then they'd come back home at night.
Wow.
And the stories that family has in the thousands of movies they appeared in, you know, like all the kids in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington were my wife's grandpa and uncle and all of that. You just hear these stories. It's so weird to think that like one family could have.
Yeah, unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
Charlie Chaplin made a film called The Kid.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And that starred a little kid named Jackie Coogan.
Okay.
Who went on to be in the Addams Family, Uncle Fester.
Oh, wow.
Eventually. He became But anyway, his name was Jackie Coogan. And little Jackie Coogan's father's name was Jackie Coogan. Yeah. And he was also an actor, the father. Okay. So Chaplin had seen the kid in something, like a live show. Yeah. And called Jackie Coogan, the father, and said, listen, I really want to hire... He said, hi, my name is Charlie Chaplin. I want to hire Jackie Coogan for my movie. So the father thought it was him that he was hiring.
Oh, wow.
To hire.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was a whole bunch of confusion, but it was really his
He wanted the
son.
kid, yeah.
And he hired the kid, and it turned out to be one of the most moving films ever. That's
incredible. Which it's now the Jim Henson Studios, but that used to be Chaplin's place.
Yeah, on La Brea.
On La Brea. I still, when I drive by it, I just think of the history that, I mean, this town is full of some of the most amazing history. Yeah. Some of the biggest tragedies as well, but you know what I mean? I
just saw Stan and Ollie, the movie.
I haven't seen it yet.
You got to see it. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
The clips I've seen look phenomenal.
It's brilliant. Go see it.
I will do it for sure.
It's amazing.
I will do it for sure. Man, I am so grateful that you would take the time to do this.
My pleasure. I hope you got what you needed.
Oh, this is beautiful. Mark, how can people follow along and see what you're doing? Is there a way?
Yeah, Mark Schiff, MarkSchiff.com.
Great.
And yeah, that's really it.
Awesome. They can go see where you're going to be and all that.
Yeah, or at Mark Schiff on Twitter.
Perfect. Well, friends, if you're listening right now, go click on the show notes, and we'll put a link right there to Mark's website. You can go follow along, see where he's going to be. But I can't thank you enough for doing this.
Thank you, Taylor. Let me shake your hand.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate
Beautiful.
you, man. Wow. There you have it, friends. Mark Schiff. What a guy. What a life. You know, I love when you talk to someone who's been in this business for years and is not jaded. They're not grumpy or disheartened. But man, to meet a guy who's been doing this for as long as Mark's been doing it, and to be so full of hope and so optimistic about life and about people. Let's never, ever, ever forget that there is not only hope for the world, but that people are going through things we don't even realize. And I love his attitude. If I can close with anything, I love his attitude of when he goes on stage, is he giving back? What are people going through? You never know what people are dealing with. And what a privilege it is for us as artists to be able to give people a little reprieve from some of the challenges that they may be going through. And whether that is using your art to tell a story or to compel people, or as Mark says, not trying to make them a more evolved human, but just giving them an escape for a moment and giving them some laughter and some joy. What a privilege. What an honor. This guy, I am so grateful that I left the house that night when I didn't feel like it to go do a show that I wasn't sure I wanted to do. And not only was that show an incredible joy to be a part of, but I got to meet Mark and we got to have this glorious conversation. So whatever you're doing today, maybe you got something on the calendar that you're not looking forward to. You don't know what that's going to lead to. So go out of the house with excitement, enthusiasm, and just do what you do to love other people. All right, gang. Thanks so much for listening to the show. If you enjoyed it, you know what? If you haven't done so already, would you go over to iTunes or SoundCloud or Spotify, and wherever you're listening, give us a 5-star review. That really does make a huge difference for helping people find the show. So thank you to everyone who's done that. Give us a 5-star review. Let us know what you think about the program. That makes a huge difference. You can also give us a call on the old hotline there. If you've got a breaking moment, we'd love to hear what it is. So you can give us a call. Go ahead and click on the show notes, get the number there, leave us a message, and maybe we'll include your story as part of the show. And of course, you can check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/about to break. Over there, we got some exclusive content just as a thank you for sponsoring us for $1 or more a month. That does help offset the cost of producing this show. Thanks so much, friends, and we'll see you next week.